Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this month. We are so glad that you're here. Thank you very much for making the time to be present with us today. Our webinar topic is on compassion fatigue. We are going to talk about recognizing and recovering from compassion fatigue. I have a fun project for us to work on, and I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. So our first task is that we're going to do a quick self-assessment. Look in the chat. Ivy is going to post a link to take you to the professional quality of life measure. You can scan the QR code or you can click the link, whichever works best for you. It's going to take about 3 minutes. You're going to get some instant results. We're going to set a timer for 3 minutes so that you have a chance to participate in that survey, answering the best that you can. Thank you for taking the time to answer that assessment. I think it will inform our conversation today. You will have received results from the survey that you took that give you a score on your compassion satisfaction, your burnout, and your secondary traumatic stress. Your score correlates to your level of risk in each of those categories. And it will help to inform the conversation that we're about to have with Lisa Rowe, who I'll invite to come on screen now. Lisa is a licensed clinical social worker in private practice. She's the co-author of Unraveled Roots and the former CEO and a current volunteer with us here at Support After Abortion. She has spent over 2 decades equipping and empowering thousands of people to find hope, healing, and restoration from foster care, codependency, unexpected pregnancy, abortion, addiction, divorce, sexual abuse, trafficking, and so much more. Her passion is revealing the root of dysfunctional behavior and helping people to find freedom from early childhood trauma. Without further ado, I'll ask Lisa to come on screen, and I'm so grateful that you're here, Lisa, to talk to us about this important topic today.
It's so good to be with my fellow colleagues and friends and seeing all your smiles. And I'm just really grateful to be connected with you today and to be talking about this really important topic. That was so formal. I feel like I'm not in the loop anymore. So Kylie, thank you for that. I was taking that assessment alongside of you. Those were such good questions and such big questions. I know that they ask you to do this and we'll talk about it in our Q&A, but if you feel like sharing to normalize some of the experiences around the compassion fatigue as we're serving other people, I'd love you to share that in the chat, maybe something that's just bringing some curiosity to this conversation today. I think that's really important. So we're going to shape this conversation. I'm going to do a little teaching around the topic of compassion fatigue. I think that compassion fatigue gets a lot of highlight. I'm to bring you my presentation in a fun and maybe playful way today and talk about a hard topic with some fun connected to it. And then we'll talk about it as a group. And that's some of my favorite things that I like to do with Support After Abortion and the family here is have great conversation because we learn from each other. We can cultivate community in ways that we don't really understand until we get to that vulnerable place. So that Q&A is going to be really important to today's conversation. And Kylie's going to help me with our screen. So whenever you're ready, Kylie, I'd love for you to share the beginning presentation slide. While she's doing that, I'm just going to bring some context. So when we talk about compassion fatigue, you heard Kylie talk about 3 different areas. You heard her talk about the compassion fatigue, the burnout, and the secondary trauma. And so my hope is that I can differentiate that for you today and help us really understand. We're going to zone into what compassion fatigue is. I hope to bring a personal connection to this for you so that when you're sitting across from a client or you're on the phone with someone, maybe a family member even, you can identify what that thing is that's going on inside of you. If we can catch when we're starting to feel irked or upset or having a difficult moment with a client and start to process that out loud, we don't ever have to get, it's my belief, to the moment of fatigue. We can get way in front of it if we have the awareness around it. So let's talk about the difference between empathy and compassion to start. Empathy is a big word to describe, I can personally relate to your experience, right? So, because I have been divorced, when I'm sitting across from somebody who's experienced divorce, I can subconsciously and consciously start to remember or connect my story to that person's story. Maybe you can recall times when you're like, I know exactly what that feels like, or I remember when, or perhaps those of you who've experienced abortion on here, when you have talk to somebody who has also experienced their own abortion experiences, you can go back intentionally or unintentionally into your own story and start to draw parallels. That is what we call empathy. And that is very different from compassion. Okay. We want to draw from our empathy. We want to be careful to have boundaries as we draw from our empathy, but compassion is different. Compassion is this draw to somebody who's in a really yucky place, who's having a difficult time. You don't necessarily have a personal connection to it, but you see how tough it is, right? I'm recalling a woman who was telling me about a sexual experience that she had with her husband in which she felt violated the other day. And I felt compassion for her because I felt her pain. I felt the disconnect that she felt with herself. I felt the shame and the guilt that she had connected to it. I had compassion for her in that moment that she needed something and she didn't have access to it inside herself. Okay. So we got empathy, which is I can personally connect to it. And we have compassion. Man, that's a hard situation. I want to be able to help you. Okay. So if we think about the word fatigue, then we know the difference between empathy and compassion. Compassion is I want to help somebody. That word fatigue speaks for itself. I'm tired, right? I'm growing weary. So if I feel compassion, I feel connected to people, I want to help them, but now we connect the word fatigue to it. It means I want to help somebody, but I am exhausted. I can't help this person anymore. I don't have it in me to connect to them. Okay. So very different conversation. If we have empathy for our clients and we don't have those boundaries, can it lead to fatigue? Yes. Can it lead to a misinterpretation of what that is? Absolutely. If we're not taking care of our junk and it turns into more and more for us taking it home, like some of those questions in the assessment, there's more of that fatigue happening. Another differentiation that I want to make sure I state is the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. Burnout is like, I can't work at this job. Can compassion fatigue lead to that? Absolutely. But we're not talking about that. Burnout is I can no longer work in this hospital setting anymore. I've worked 3 12-hour shifts and I am being asked to do overtime left and right. I'm not getting any time to sleep. I am burnt out. Where compassion fatigue is, I don't have anything in me left to hear one more person's story. I don't care about one more person's story. I don't want to hear another person tell me that they need financial support because don't they understand the state of the economy, right? Very different dynamic. Burnout, I can't do this physically anymore. I can't do this. Compassion fatigue, I don't want to. Right? It doesn't do anything for me. So just differentiating between those 3 different areas. And then the other area that we talked about with the exam was secondary trauma. Oftentimes compassion fatigue is also known as secondary trauma. So we hear a lot about this when we see veterans return from war, right? And they're being met with social workers and nurses and doctors when they return. And the first encounter after they've been at war, they're dropping all of that pain, all of the need that they have after returning from war on these helpers. And you do that long enough, you hear the stories long enough, you can grow that compassion fatigue. You can have secondary trauma. So the person who served on the front lines received that trauma experience. And because you are the secondary person to receive that, you then become inundated with that experience. So just understanding what those different parts mean so that when you're not in front of me or this group of people and you're in front of that client and you're having that internal reaction or internal dialogue with yourself, you can name what's going on so you know how to walk that path forward. Okay. So we're going to move on to how this might look for you. And this is where we're going to get really playful. Let's talk about what it really looks like to recognize it in yourself. The first thing I want to always do is create a metaphor for you. I'm envisioning a sponge, a dish sponge perhaps, or a car washing sponge. And I'm envisioning us being the sponges. You may have heard me talk like this before. I love this metaphor. When we are working with people that we want to serve, we care about, our family members, whomever it is, it's as if our heart, our body, everything we bring with us is the sponge. And when we're in that experience, part of us naturally absorbs whatever is being exchanged in that conversation. So maybe we entered into that conversation dry, and that's a good thing. Formed, we're connected to our sponge-like selves. And as people begin to share their hopes, their dreams, their heartaches, their pains, whatever it is, there's this essence of this exchange where our sponge begins to absorb whatever those experiences are. It's a natural tendency, right? You are drawn to people like this because they make eye contact, they lean into you, they want to hear, they want to ask more questions, they want to get curious. And so our sponge begins to fill up. When compassion fatigue sets in is when that sponge is smelly, it's been sitting in the sink, it has not been wrung out, and it just keeps absorbing and it never wrings out. What we want to do is understand that this isn't a matter of not leaning into our clients. This isn't a matter of disconnecting from them. Yes, we're going to sit and have that natural exchange, but what do we do afterwards? How do we take care of ourselves in those situations? Like every good person anymore who uses Google, we go to Reddit and we find out, what do people actually say when they're under compassion fatigue? And so I want to read these out loud. And I want you to just be thinking maybe how maybe you've said these things in the past, or you've heard these things in the past. There was a researcher who said, hey, I'm doing this project and I want to know what compassion fatigue feels like to you. And it came up on my search. And I just want to kind of start to articulate this. So one woman said, I can't even take a deep breath. Another one said, my give a crap meter, it's gone. I'm like absent when I enter a room with a client. And I'm going to begin to create what I see happening within us as we start to say these things. I feel absent because I've absorbed everybody's pain. And so now I've started to take on the look of someone else, and I start to become someone else. I feel like I'm being separated from the rest of the world. Well, yeah, you are, because you're starting to clown around with other people's behaviors. When I start to see long-term care as a human warehousing, yeah, I'm not even myself anymore. I'm absorbing everybody else's pain. I feel nothing. I clearly should feel something, but I feel absolutely nothing. I am over hearing about these people's problems. I don't care about the causes of their pain anymore. I cannot go to work today and hear one more 20-year-old complain about how hard life is right now. I can't feel, I can't live anymore. If one more person tells me they have COVID, I am going to lose it. Why can't they just get the help that they need? And let's just stop in that. I look ridiculous. I could put on the rest of the clown costume, but I feel like I've made enough of a nuisance of myself. We become something that we don't even recognize. The reason we became who we are, the motives that drove us to the positions that we're in, to the groups that we're leading, to the space that we are holding for other people, the person, the interior space that led us, that drew us here, is now covered up by this ridiculousness because we've allowed ourselves to continue absorbing and connecting to other people's pain without wringing out our sponge. And literally, if we had to take a picture of what it looks like, how we're trying to show up for people when we're not showing up for ourselves, we literally, if we could really formulate a picture of what we look like clowns, putting on the fake face and doing the fake little show when all inside we have nothing left. It's so important when you feel like you've put that shield up, when you've worn on somebody else's pain, when you're sitting in front of somebody, your brain is in every other space but what's right in front of you, right? That you have no compassion for their space anymore, that you can't hold that space for them anymore. That's an indicator light that you have lost your way, and we've got to get help for that. So we're going to put some things inside of your chat box to have some more assessments. You used one of them. Maybe your volunteers need it. Maybe you need some more space. Maybe you have family members who you see they're having compassion fatigue for their kids. And if they could get some awareness around this, maybe they could start towards a path of healing. So use those tools. We're going to move to what does it look like to address and resolve compassion fatigue. I think there's a lot of people out there that would just say, bring out the sponge, right? Do some self-care, start a kickboxing class, go get a facial. I'm going to submit to you that that doesn't align with where I stand, right? That to me is meeting the symptom, and we're not going to get to the root. And there is a major pathway to deeper rooted things. And if we don't get to that, it's going to keep repeating itself. I've seen people leave jobs, go back to school for another master's degree, all because they haven't addressed that deep-rooted issue. And they just say, this job isn't for me. But there's something more to that. What I would always encourage is if any of this resonates, or you know somebody that's operating in this space, shows up to work sarcastic every day, makes jokes about what clients are saying, isn't able to process with their clients anymore, doesn't want to lead a group anymore, we want to get to the root of what's driving that. What created that space inside of them that they no longer want to help because they're fatigued? That space they once held that they wanted to help people so desperately, they're running far from it. Or maybe you have the people like me who are incredibly codependent and will put on the clown costume and deny everything inside of them and all that's going on. Everybody else can see it, but I won't say it out loud, right? So we have to get to the root of what's going on. And the way we do that is that we are in check with this material by surely being here today and creating this awareness around what is this space that's happening inside of us, that it is very normal when you're exchanging relationships with people. We need to get the support, whether it's through a therapist, a coach, a peer support group. You need that space to be able to talk about these things. We have it built into our licensure process that we actually, as therapists, have to meet weekly with our clinicians that are brand new to this workspace so that they can receive the supervision, so that they can begin to cultivate an awareness in this space. It's a safeguard for us as we're growing new clinicians in this space. I recommend that for everyone. A client care meeting always, and it's not just to talk about the clients, it's to talk about what's going on inside of us. When I have a clinician bring to me, I'm having a really hard time with this client, I'm asking them, what is coming up inside of you? First and foremost, not what's coming up with the client, not how to solve the client's problem, but what's coming up inside of you that we need to be in touch with. That doesn't seem like the way that you've always shown up for other clients. What's different about this client? What's different about you? Having a mechanism that's built in, if you're a volunteer, if you do groups sporadically, when you're building ready for that group and you're in the midst of that group, I want you checking in with somebody that you trust and value every week to stay connected to this, right? If you're coming out of a season where you've done and done and done and done and done, and you feel that fatigue, let's check in with that, right? But just like when I was reading on Reddit, I mean, these people were saying left and right, I was exercising, I was doing all the things, I was self-caring, and I still felt this thing. Yeah, because it was tethered way deep to something that wasn't being addressed through training for the 5K and getting that facial every day. Not to say that those things aren't important as we're trying to take care of ourselves, but we need to understand where this is all beginning to accumulate, if you will. This is how important this topic is about communicating. It's so important. Do not become the clown like I am, or I was, or I can be, and just trying to hold all of it. I guarantee you 80% of you on this call today are just like me. We've had all these experiences and we get a whole lot of energy from helping other people. And we want to do the best that we can. And so it is really hard for us to admit that we're in a place that we can't help people the way that we once did. Or we actually have negative feelings towards our clients or negative feelings towards people. So we need to have a safe place to be able to explore what we're feeling and what we're experiencing and have check-ins regularly to stay humble and vulnerable with people that we can trust. And if you're on this call right now and you're like, I don't have that, well, reach out to Support After Abortion. I am certain that this team will develop something or have something that you can connect to, but don't leave yourself out to dry. And so many people in our industry do that. Right? They think that they have to bear all the weight on their shoulders. They have to take one for the team all the time, and they have to be the one that's all knowing and all powerful. But the reality is that's not who we are. Our sponges get full, and sometimes we don't know how to wring out, and we don't know what to do, and we don't even realize sometimes we need to be wrung out. This is my favorite part of these conversations. I am so interested in how compassion fatigue has showed up for you, how it's shown up in the people that you work with, how you've worked through it, how you're struggling with it right now. And I know that Kylie is usually the moderator of this, so I'm going to turn it back to her, and I am happy to engage in whatever conversations come about.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been a really fruitful conversation, and I couldn't help but imagine that there's somebody on our call right now who's in tears. And they are becoming aware of something that they just didn't know until this morning. So I want to thank you for being with us, returning to us to sit in this really important space. There have been a couple of things that have come through, comments, direct messages, etc. Nicole from Ontario, I'd really love to invite you to come on directly and share your comment. In the meantime, Lisa, we have a question from someone on the chat that says, how do you trust the person that you share with?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I always say that I pick people who I look up to and I admire their way of traveling through life. I admire their values. They've been places I haven't yet. And so the way I pick people I lean into is that they're not below me. They don't have less experience than me. They don't have less qualifications than me. They're not on my level. They don't have the same experiences. They are beyond where I am. That's how I learned to trust people, because I watch their life, I watch their character in action. So I typically decide to lean upward when I'm looking at conversations that we're talking about today. That's how I choose to trust people, what their life looks like in action. Sometimes we only have our peers, right? I never reach down, ever. Sometimes our peers are what's available to us. And so I always just recognize that when I'm going into that conversation, that I need to filter it through this person has the same experience I do. And maybe this is just a place for me to purge or to vent for that moment, but I'm likely not going to walk away with some sort of revelation or new experience. I'm just going to make sure that I filter it of where it is, but I'm never reaching down for support in these conversations.
Thank you. Next question, Lisa, is how can we address compassion fatigue as a team without singling out an individual or making them feel like they're not doing enough?
Okay. So I'm going to probably answer this in a different way than anybody would want me to, but I'm going to say, why aren't you willing to have that direct conversation with that one person? That to me is bringing compassion fatigue onto yourself because you're tiptoeing around an experience. I think the number one thing we can do as providers and as people that care for other people is be willing to have these crucial conversations with love and compassion. We're only hurting them by dancing around. I can't tell you how many people have been like, I went to this business meeting and I know they were talking directly to me, but they wouldn't have a conversation directly with me. People know this. People understand this. So if it does need to be a general training like what we're doing here, wonderful. But I would say as a leader, I always go directly to what's going on. And it has always served me to be able to have that direct and loving conversation.
Thank you. I am going to read Nicole's feedback. I sometimes wonder if compassion fatigue can be directed to a particular client or story, like we just don't have the capacity to give any more toward that one circumstance, yet we can still be available for another client who's in a different situation. Is this something that I should pay attention to?
Absolutely. And that's why we addressed empathy versus compassion. I would want you to go to that particular story. What is it about that story that feels perplexing or challenging or overwhelming? I have this thing with clients who are constant, like the person who says, like, I want to change. We go through this entire session and they come back and it's the same story over again. Did you do your homework? No, I didn't have time. And it's this constant perpetuating that irks me, because I am hungry for growth. And I know it irks me when I have clients that aren't ready to grow. And so I often have direct conversations with them that say, I am a therapist who really values growth. And right now we've had 3 sessions where we've discussed very similar conversations, very similar direction moving forward. And it seems as though you're struggling to take that next step. What more can we do to start working towards that growth opportunity? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. How do you think our relationship can serve this purpose? What do you need from me? And it constantly is giving it back to the client, giving it back to those that we're serving so that we're not absorbing things that aren't ours to absorb. If they don't want to grow or they're not ready to grow or they're feeling perplexed in this space, it's not for me to take ownership of that. I've been my most authentic self in this relationship, and now I'm turning it back to that client to say what's going on. So I already know that I'm perplexed by people that aren't ready to grow. That's not my best client. It's not my favorite client. And I have to be very aware when they're not growing that it is going to irk something inside of me. And I need to make sure that that stays a client thing, not a me thing. And so doing that personal evaluation, that inventory of self, having the conversation with somebody that you trust and that will give you positive or crucial feedback, and then taking it back to that client and being willing to give it back to them and let them process and experience it. And if this relationship no longer serves either one of you, well, then you need to give the relationship away to somebody that maybe can help in a different way.
Thank you. I have a question from Elise. She has shared that she's recently becoming aware of her own experience of burnout and/or compassion fatigue. She has a therapist who has helped her to realize this last week and have been rating her burnout each day on a scale of 0 to 5, with 5 being the worst and 0 being great. What she doesn't know is when she should talk to her supervisor about it. I trust and value the person I admire, but don't want the conversation to automatically be about finding new work. What would y'all suggest?
Great question. So remember at the beginning, we discussed the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. Can compassion fatigue lead to burnout? Absolutely. So I would want you to find yourself on a Likert scale, 1 being, I don't want to hear another client conversation right now. I need a couple days off. 2, I am ready to quit this job and start an entirely different career out of 5. And I'd want you at least to find yourself and where are you on that spectrum? And we always want to have conversations with people that are in supervisor roles or business conversation type settings without emotion as much as we can. We want to have as much objectivity as possible. So right now, it seems like your frontal lobe and your emotional experience is fogging out your executive functioning, your intellectual understanding. Until that's cleared when you're doing that work with your therapist, I wouldn't allow this part of who you are to inform a conversation with your supervisor. You're going to want to sort this out. Do you want to quit the job so you can go in objectively and let them know you're resigning? Or are you just letting them know that your caseload right now is too intense for where you're at? Or you're finding that you are triggered by domestic violence survivors because of whatever other reasons, or you're triggered by the male experience or whatever it is, so that you can be more objective with the supervisor that you have so that she knows or he knows how to support you. But if you leave it up to the supervisor, they're going to solve the problem for you when it's your problem that we'd like you to bring a solution to, or at least ability to have a conversation towards a solution.
I think we have some questions that are building to hone in on a focus here. If a staff or volunteer is showing signs of compassion fatigue, should we require them to take time off or provide some type of leave?
It's a great question. Again, I would go back to that Likert scale, right? If you catch it early enough, I wouldn't say that you need that severe of an outcome. I would say if we can catch these experiences because we're weekly meeting with our people and we're noticing challenges, we might say, hey, the next group, I don't want you to lead. Or, hey, I'm going to add somebody to the group so you don't have to carry all the weight of whatever else it is that you're doing. But if we're super far down the line, absolutely, you want to protect and keep our clients as safe as possible from people that can't get out of their own way right now. If they're showing up like a clown and they don't know it, get those clients into a safe space and absolutely protect those clients from somebody who needs more support and needs some rest.
Question from someone else. I tend to experience compassion fatigue off and on, like once or twice, maybe a quarter. Is this bad or normal for those serving clients daily?
Normal, normal. And the fact that you can even identify it, I would say, what do you do as a result of that? How do you identify that? And those would be, as a supervisor or business owner, my indicator lights of how healthy you are. I just came out of a season of serving 10 clients a day, 4 days a week, because we were on all these vacations and different things. And by the end of that last week, I was exhausted. And it just so happened that I had this ability to recollect and reconnect with myself. And I have a team of people that I am supported by. And the next week, I was back to a really, really minimal schedule with some relief and some real reflection time. And that seems to be my cadence sometimes in different seasons. So that's a measure of someone's health in this space. I hear a lot of stories, a lot of different experiences. You can only absorb so much as a human. And we want to be conscientious of that. If you're leading a 12-week group, by week 10, 11, 12, you're losing the momentum forward. Anybody that's ever led a group that long, that's a long group to lead. And you've heard a lot of stories and you lived a lot of life with that person. You're going to naturally, some of you, be very exhausted. And that's normal. We know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and we work through that. We're honest with ourselves. We're giving ourselves space for that. But what we don't want to do is ignore that. We don't want to say, oh, that's nothing, or I don't want to identify that. We want to say, this is a long group. This is a lot of commitment time. This is a lot of sacrifice to be connected to this. And I know that in 3 weeks it'll be over and I'll have more time to myself. But for right now, I'm not feeling like I did at week 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This seems like a good juncture to make a deposit into all of you who are listening where this really resonates. I want you to know that we have two outlets for you. One is that we have a quarterly facilitator training, brings facilitators of all sorts of curriculums together for a training. It's our deposit into you. It's an opportunity to collaborate with others and to be nourished, not only from an educational space, but also from an emotional space. We also have a coaching program. It's led by seasoned facilitators who can help walk with you as you facilitate groups like Keys to Hope and Healing and Unraveled Roots. So please let us know if we can be of a support for you. Next question, Lisa. This is a special one. This person is sharing that they are an entrepreneur who has a coaching program. She says, how would someone like me create support when the symptoms of compassion fatigue begin to surface?
Oh, well, number one, I would say you're already behind the 8 ball if you're looking for somebody when you've established that you have compassion fatigue. I would want anybody that's serving alone or who has these isolated experiences to already have a board of directors, to already have that team built, 1 to 3 people in which they can reach out before the group starts, during the group, before their coaching experience, during the coaching experience, once a week, whatever the cadence is that feels right to you. I'd want you to have that far before you get to that place of compassion fatigue. And then I would continue that cadence as long as it serves you. And I wouldn't take it for granted. There's going to be some days where it's not a check-in about how you're doing specifically to compassion fatigue, but that board of directors will serve you in other capacities too. That mentor will hold space for you. Maybe it's a collaborative effort like Support After Abortion, like Kylie just shared, having a space where you can come and feel connected to other individuals and be able to share as you need. But like anything else, if we wait till until we get to that point, we're already in trouble and we're already in the rip current going, I don't know how to get out, right? We want to know that that rip current's coming. There's a lifeguard on the beach, and that lifeguard is capable of saving us when we're there, and we know where the lifeguard is, and we know how to put our hands in the air, whatever the circumstances are. But we don't want to go into the ocean going, there's no lifeguard. I know there's rip currents, and I'm just going to leave it up to whatever to happen. That's what I would offer.
Crystal has shared that they've incorporated wellness walks on their
Cool.
team. Love that idea.
Mm.
Marlene has shared that she thought your clown face was a fantastic metaphor, and it will be an image that will come to her mind and trigger self-reflection. I had a sneak peek about this last night, and I had no idea how you were going to incorporate it. It was absolutely a wonderful way to remind us of what we're looking for. So thank you so much, Marlene, for your feedback. And this is a great segue. There's a question of how frequently should we be assessing ourselves? What do you recommend for looking for signs for compassion fatigue?
Let me talk to you about that as a mom of teenagers right now. I think our emotional, our spiritual, our intellectual maturity is all relative to this question. I think when we're new to a space, when we're more immature in a space, we should be doing check-ins pretty regularly. The more mature we get, but it doesn't mean we're not prone to it, or we shouldn't be open to the vulnerability in that space. Just think, as we're walking this journey together, if there's something new that comes and we're less secure in how we're operating, we should have a more regularly connected experience, right? That's been everything in my life as well. And I'm watching my 14-year-olds start their freshman year of high school, and it's like a daily check-in right now. Like, how are things? How is your teachers? How are the students? How's your friends, right? Now, maybe 6 months into the school year, we're going to be checking in maybe once a week or every other day or whatever it might be, but it's pretty ridiculous right now just to keep a pulse on it. And I would say that's what we want to do as ourselves too. Like, where am I? Maybe use that Likert scale again. Am I a newbie? Am I in the middle? Am I more mature in this space? And then recognizing, what do I need in this moment?
Okay, well, you called us to have those direct conversations when we identify possible compassion fatigue. I say possible because you've also let us know that we need to be collaborating with the person who's feeling it to make sure that we're collaborating with them on what they feel and what is right for them as far as next steps. Can you model what that conversation would be like? You're the employer in this scenario. You think somebody may be experiencing something between compassion fatigue or burnout, and you want to chat with them about it. How would you guide that conversation?
That's a great question, Kylie. And maybe I'll just talk to you as if I'm modeling it. But the first thing before I would even start this modeling is I would remember that relationships are like bank accounts. We want to consider how much equity we have, how much deposits we've made in this relationship, and how many withdrawals we're about to take. Oftentimes, we aren't very mindful of how much is in our bank account relationally, and we go to withdraw and we wonder why people take our experiences so personally. And sometimes those personal rejections or abandonment are connected to other people's stuff. So please don't hear that all the reactions are because you haven't made deposits. I just want you to be mindful. I'm very conscientious when I'm about to take a withdrawal, is how I'm going to call this conversation. I'm going to be very mindful of the relationship that I have established with this particular individual. And I'm going to be very mindful of how direct I can be and all of that based on my relational equity. And then I'm going to be very direct with that person. Hey, I'd like to have a conversation, Kylie. I'm noticing some differences in your behavior, and I'd like to have a conversation as soon as possible. And then name what time and get that conversation. A lot of times we go into that conversation and nobody even knows it's coming. That is the worst thing we can do, to not set a conversation up for success when we know we're going to be withdrawing. And you don't have to go into all the details or all the dynamics with it, but hey, I've noticed some changes and I want to talk to you about them. So the person knows they might be nervous, whatever. And then I'd go into the meeting and I'd say, I'm so grateful that you're here in this meeting. I know that you already know what we're talking about, but I want to first check in. How are you coming to this meeting? So you can get a pulse. Where are they? I'm really nervous. I'm fine. I'm anticipating what you're going to say, right? Just getting a check-in so you understand what's going on. And then I'd lead with, hey, the last 3 Thursdays, I've noticed how you've come to our call, and I've noticed that you've said some things, and I'd have them objectively. I always encourage people when they're going into crucial conversations, have the direct things. We don't want to lead with, I felt like you were, or I think you should. I'm going to say, hey, you said I don't like this client. You said, I want to leave early today. You said, this particular situation, I don't want anything to do with anymore. And I just really want to reflect that back to you and ask you, what do those things mean to you? They might say, I didn't even know I said that. They might say things like, well, that's the truth. I just don't feel like I want to serve that client anymore. Okay, what's behind that? Well, they've come to session 6 times late. They're not taking group seriously and these sort of things. And then we get to dive into a conversation, which hopefully will evolve into some of our clients are like this. And we meet our clients where they're at. What do you need to be able to serve that client and understand that we meet them where they're at? And if they can't identify that, here's what I'm going to recommend. I think after this group ends or before this group ends, we need to get deeper with this. I'd like you to join this group, or I'd like you to continue to talk about this in our support group that's already established, and so on and so forth. Did that answer your question, Kylie?
It did. And to really put a fine point on it, because we're so mindful about our language here at Support After Abortion, are there any phrases or words that you would encourage us to avoid in this conversation?
Yeah, I feel we don't want to be subjective if we can. We want to bring as much objectivity to a conversation like this. And we also want to be super direct. We don't want to dance around things because people can sense that inauthenticity. Everything I said was something I've already said to people, and they usually walk away knowing that they can trust me because I've been my honest self with them. The last thing we want somebody who's already struggling in this space is to not trust their supervisor and wonder if their supervisor is really telling them what they want to hear or what they needed to hear. We always, in our humanity, needing to hear things is really hard, but we always, and you guys know this, walking away from a conversation where you heard something that helped you and that maybe nobody else did for you always leaves you feeling more secure in that relationship than something that didn't feel so clear or it was really foggy. So directness, you guys have heard me say this too, questions like what and how, we always want, I don't want to hear the question why. Why goes backwards, why looks to personalize it. What happened here? How can you get better? What do you need from me? How can we work on this together? What did your clients need? How can you improve this? Instead of saying, why did you do that? Why do you think that happened? Stay away from that.
We modeled this over a supervisor and an employee. Is there any difference you'd like to call out with regard to peer-to-peer, coworkers, friends, volunteers in our organizations?
I think it's the same. I think that maybe it will feel a little bit softer. There's a little bit of safer place to land because there isn't that power differential, but still just naming that, hey, Susie, I wanted to talk to you today. I noticed something and I'm worried about you. And then entering into the conversation, just saying, hey, I noticed how you showed up in group and I noticed Danielle didn't receive that well. She said, blah, 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 blah. Did you notice that? And then offering like, what can I do to support you? Just opening it up for a conversation. When it becomes somewhere that the peer shouldn't enter in, like my husband is cheating on me and he's struggling with his cocaine addiction. Well, that's beyond the peer support and you do not want to hold that. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's beyond me. I really want to invite Kylie into this conversation so she can support you further.
You're getting a lot of praise in our chat, both directly and indirectly. People are just feeling really grateful. I'm going to call out Jane Abate. She says, I so appreciate, Lisa, how clear, specific, and direct you approach conversations. There's a couple of amens and 100% and even a green heart. There's also a call for getting a cheat sheet of Lisa's tips to help you with having those direct conversations. What a joy it has been to have this reunion of sorts together with you today and have an opportunity to really focus on this important topic. My name is Kylie Heap. I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of Support After Abortion. Lisa, it has been a privilege and an honor to have you here on this call. Oh my, oh, you need to brace me. This will be forever embedded in my memory too, Lisa. So thank you so much for the way in which you lead with such vulnerability. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.